Hi, this is Carter from our group Distorted Designs, and this is a presentation on the progress of our project Winter's Bite. So to start, here's the content of our presentation. We'll go over the inspiration to our game, what we ended up conceptualizing, the approach we took to this concept, the metrics we used to determine whether or not our approach was successful, the various software and tools we used to tackle this project, what resulted from all this work, and finally the lessons we learned. So to start, the literature review. So we decided on doing something from the horror genre due to how popular and interesting these games have become on the indie market. We wanted to take to titles like Amnesia and Outlast due to the resource mechanics and isolated experience to be able to create our own tense and challenging title. So when we're thinking about the core mechanics of our game, we took inspiration from titles such as Cold Call for a simple movement system that'll help us streamline creation with such a small team. So by having limited spaces that you can move to and set interactions within them, it means certain parts of the scene need less attention and or detail because the player is not immediately adjacent to it. So this ended up being one of our core design principles moving forward. Another core mechanic we took inspiration from and integrated into our gameplay loop was that of COD Zombies. The ability to barricade and repair said barricades with set hit points leads to the player having to make strategic decisions on what to block off, since because of both time and resource constraints, they can't do everything. So, what was the problem? We found that we didn't want to incorporate a classic hit points or instantaneous death system similar to other indie horror games, where you'd be given, in a way, either one chance or a limited amount of hits that you can take before the game ends. So these are very common themes in other titles, including both recent and old, popular indie games such as Five Nights at Freddy's, Lethal Company, and more recently, Repo. So what was our solution to this conundrum? Since our setting was very constricted, being a small, confined cabin during a blizzard, which ended up being a purposeful design decision to help narrow the scope for our project, we couldn't really take advantage of either of those aforementioned mechanics. So as said before, we didn't. We decided to take a different approach, relying solely on the player's interaction with the environment to create tension, induce stress, and eventually leading to losing the game by being overwhelmed from poor decision making due to the culmination of these effects. So by combining this approach with our point-and-click movement system, we're able to capture a tense experience where the player can be frantically pacing around the cabin trying to react to all these environmental disturbances one after another. It constantly keeps the player on edge from eerie noises to windows opening, lights flickering, the fireplace going out, whatever it may be. So this is ultimately incredibly dynamic and a much more non-uniform or uncommon approach to the genre. So to summarize, our gameplay loop revolves around the player cycling throughout the environment. They familiarize themselves slowly, with the difficulty increasing and peaking later in the level as the creature becomes more aggressive. The creature is what we've identified kind of as the force causing all these disturbances, tension or threats, whatever you want to call it. And so temperature is one of the mechanics that the creature uses. They try to open windows to put out the fire, to try and freeze the player during the blizzard. And if the player misses one too many of these cues, such as scratching, knocking, or breaking through barricades, the creature may break in and end the game. So what were our measures of success? As previously mentioned, our goal was to create a point-and-click horror game with various unique ways to pressure the player. The game makes great use of said mechanics to set itself apart from other titles in the indie horror genre. So our current success is based on level implementation between systems developed and the assets/art we've created. Systems such as our resources, repairs, camera movement, etc., as well as the assets we've created and are currently in the process of implementing to the game world. Now, our methodology. So just to give a quick walkthrough of this process, we conceptualized and finalized our ideas, began development, started crafting assets and systems, and are now in the phase of putting them together and continue to iterate upon fixing and any bugs we come across. So some of the software and tools that we have used include Unreal Engine 5 for our game engine, Maya, Blender, and Substance Painter for modeling and texturing. Audacity was utilized for audio. GitHub, Discord, Jira, Trello, and Google Docs have all also been used for us to coordinate and organize our ideas. So moving back to our asset workflow, the pipeline starts in Maya or Blender as a high and low poly, then being moved to Substance for texturing, then recompiled in Blender or Maya, and finally exported to Unreal Engine 5 into the game. So finally, to go to our results and our lessons learned. We've got most of the core mechanics and blockout assets in the environment already, which have been and continue to be tested / experimented with. These include our previously mentioned point and click mirror movement, barriers, resources, and what's being developed into our temperature mechanic. Alongside these programming aspects, all of our art, UI, and audio assets are still being compiled, but they're primarily finalized and polished for final implementation into the game. So, what did we learn? We learned how to narrow the scope of our project while retaining creative and dynamic core systems that ultimately will lead to a higher quality project without overblowing or capable of completing, given both the size of our team and the amount of time to work on it. We also worked to help divide up the work through various tools such as Trello, GitHub, Discord, and Jira to help communicate and ensure productivity and task alignment, given the nature of our small and often remote team. We also kept iterating on not just our concept and ideation, but our mechanics through playtesting and discussing them to ensure a more engaging experience. So that concludes our presentation, and thank you.